So I'll tell you a story. About the middle of the 18th century, there was something called the Black Death of childbirth. And basically what was happening is there was this scourge over across Europe that when women would give birth, they would die within 3 days of having their child. The average number of people who died in those days was about 25%, but in some hospitals, it was as high as 65%. So 65% in some hospitals of women who gave birth in that hospital would die within 3 days. Now, this was the age of enlightenment, a time when tradition and myth were thrown away and replaced with numbers and science and empiricism. And so the doctors, these new scientists, these new empiricists, they got to work to figure out a cure. And unlike in the old ways, they would do studies and tests and figure out metrics to figure out the cure to this black death of childbirth. And so these men of science would conduct autopsies in the morning, and in the afternoon they would go back to the hospitals and they would deliver more babies. And nobody was washing their hands. And it was actually Oliver Wendell Holmes, the father of later Supreme Court Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes, who was also a doctor, who realized that there was the problem was it was the doctors who was transferring the bacteria. In fact, he was the one who came up with the word antiseptic. We didn't have that word prior to him. He actually coined that word. And here's the best part. They completely ostracized him and criticized him, and nobody took his word seriously for 12 years. It wasn't until 12 years after Wendell Holmes sort of said this is what was happening did people start washing their hands, and the black death of childbirth disappeared. That's all it was. The point is that we are all engaged in activities, whether it's owning a business or doing things online or whatever we're doing, that have unintended consequences. And we have a massive responsibility because we are all in the care of people. Some of them work for us, some of them are our customers, and some of them we never even get to meet or see because they exist on the other side of a digital device. And yet there are things we say and there are things we do that will affect them and sometimes hurt them. And we can't just default to numbers and empiricism to try and figure out the cure when sometimes we're the problem, right? So what I've learned is that if you look at sort of the great organizations, the ones in which they seem to have this unrivaled ability to innovate and care for each other and cooperate and trust each other and manage through storms and hard times, what you see is the reason is because they actually care about each other and like each other. The problem is we can't tell people, you need to collaborate, you need to trust each other, come up with a big idea. You can't tell people to do those things. However, if you're in an environment in which people trust and care about each other, those things are results. Innovation, trust, collaboration are the results of being in an environment where we feel safe. That's it. And if you go back sort of to the history of man, sort of when Homo sapiens started walking across this planet, about 50,000 years ago in the Paleolithic era, you see that the human animal evolved for a very simple reason, to stay alive and thrive. We weren't the only hominid species that existed at the time, and yet they died off and we survived. So how did we survive? We survived because we worked together. We're certainly not the strongest, and we're certainly not the fastest, and yet we had to eat and protect ourselves. And the only way that we were able to eat and protect ourselves is because we did it together. Here's the remarkable thing. Our bodies, everything about our bodies, is designed to keep us alive, right? To protect us and help us. We have eyebrows to catch the sweat so when we're running, it won't go in our eyes so we can be successful. We have taste buds so we can taste food to tell us that if we've eaten something spoiled so we don't die. I mean, everything about our bodies is designed to help us, including the way we feel, right? If you've ever had any feelings of pride, happiness, joy, fulfillment, status, any of these feelings, those feelings are there to help us collaborate and look after each other. Our bodies naturally want to get us to work together. Look what happened in Boston. The bombs go off during the marathon, and people who are not first responders rush towards scenes of carnage that will haunt them for years to help people they don't know. That's natural. That's what human beings do. We help each other. And when the conditions are right, that's exactly what happens. our bodies work like all organizations, right? If we, inside our organizations, want people to do something, if we want to encourage a certain behavior, what do? We reward them, right? We give them a bonus, or we offer them some sort of promise of bounty or threat of punishment to get them to do something. If management decides that this is the goal, we offer a bonus to people who do that, and guess what people do? They do exactly what management wants, right? Our bodies work the same way. Inside our bodies, we have 4 major chemicals that control all the feelings of happiness or joy or status or pride. I'll generically call them happiness, right? They control all those feelings in an effort to reward us to repeat things in our best interest. Those 4 chemicals are endorphins, dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin, right? I'll tell you what they are really quickly. The first 2 chemicals, endorphins and dopamine, I like to call them the selfish chemicals, and you'll understand why in a moment. Endorphins, where's Joe? He knows all about endorphins, right? Endorphins have one job and one job only, to mask physical pain. That's it, right? You go for a run, and you push yourself harder than you've ever pushed, and it feels good. Now, you're destroying your body, right? And after you're done with your run, you still feel awesome. And then an hour later, you're in pain for damage you caused to your body an hour before, right? But our bodies hide that pain. It masks that pain. And the reason was very practical, right? It's because we are not the fastest or strongest animals in the world, right? And we can't outrun a gazelle, and yet we still have to track food. We don't know where the apple tree is when we go gathering, and so we just go out walking, right? And the problem is we'd either get outrun or we'd never get there, right? And so we have the capacity for endurance. Human beings are endurance animals, and so the gazelle can run faster than us, but not for very long. And we can track it for hours and hours and hours and miles and miles and miles and miles and miles, and eventually we wear out whatever we're looking for, and then we hunt them and bring them home. And if we're hurt or if we're tired, if we're exhausted, it wouldn't be a very good system if we made this kill and we never took the food back to the tribe. It wouldn't work. And so our bodies have provided that it actually feels good. And so we keep going. And so the next day when somebody says, who wants to go hunting? You're like, I love it. I'll go. Right? I love it. It's like people love exercise. Right? That's what endorphins do. They mask physical pain. This is why laughing feels good, by the way. Because what happens is we're actually convulsing our internal organs. And to hide the physical pain, our bodies release endorphins, which feels good. And we've all been in the situation where you laugh so much, it actually hurts. Stop, it hurts, we say. Well, that's what endorphins do, right? In our modern day and age, with cars and supermarkets, pretty much the only way you get endorphins is by going for a run or having exercise. We don't need it for survival anymore. The other chemical is called dopamine. Dopamine is the feeling you get when you find something you're looking for or when you accomplish a goal you set out to achieve, right? So you know that feeling when you make a to-do list, your little checklist, and you go through your checklist, how good it feels to cross something off the list? That's dopamine, okay? I went out to run some errands, and I took my little Post-it pad with all of my to-do lists on it, and I forgot to write something on my list that I remembered to do while I was out. And so I ran my errand, and then when I was done with the errand, I wrote it on the piece of paper and crossed it out. Just so I could get the dopamine, right? This is what dopamine does. We get dopamine when we achieve something we set out to achieve, right? So this is why they always tell us, write down your goals. We're always told, write down your goals. If you don't write down your goals, you won't achieve your goals. There's truth behind that. There's biology behind that, right? We have to be able to see what we're doing, and so when we reach it, we feel good, right? Like you win the ball game. It feels good. That's all dopamine. The history of dopamine is a lot more practical. It's just about food, right? What happens is we get dopamine hits when we eat. And so we want more of that, right? We like to feel good. And so we go looking for the thing that gives us that feeling. And so when you see food in the distance, a cherry tree, whatever it is, you get a small shot of dopamine. And what dopamine does, it makes us focused on the goal. And so we don't get distracted. And it keeps us going towards it. And as we get a little closer, the tree gets a little bigger, you get another little shot of dopamine. And the tree gets a little bigger, and you get another little shot of dopamine. And finally, when you get to the tree, you're like, yes! Big shot of dopamine. Right? And you're rewarded for repeating the behavior of going to look for things that you want or need. That's what happens. And so this is why they call it vision. CEOs have to have vision so you can see it. If you can't see it or imagine it, we don't get the dopamine and we can't stay focused on it. To be the biggest supplier of X, to be the most respected company, these are not visions, because I can't see that. What's the metric for the most respected? What, by your customers, your mother, your employees? I can't see that. When Martin Luther King said, I have a dream that one day little black children and little white children will play in the playground together and hold hands, we can see that, we can imagine it, and we can set our path and task to achieve that. And every time we achieve one of these milestones that we feel like we've made it a little closer to that goal, we get more dopamine and we keep going and we keep going and we keep going. It's all biology, right? Here are some other things that release dopamine. When we go shopping, we love shopping. We love eBay. We love Google, right? You type something in, nothing comes up. You type something in, it comes up. I found it. We don't go searching through page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5. We just type in and go, and type in and go, right? It's why we love eBay. Look, 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 found it. It's like you don't need another little glass elephant for your collection, right? Oh my God, look, I gotta have it. The feeling of I gotta have it and I would pay anything for it, that's dopamine, right? And there's a problem though. Dopamine is highly, 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 highly addictive. Here are other things that release dopamine: nicotine, alcohol, gambling, your cell phone. I'm not joking, right? They say that if you need to have a drink in the morning, you might be an alcoholic. If you wake up in the morning and the first thing you do is check your phone before you even get out of bed, you might be an addict. If you walk from room to room in your own home holding your phone, you might be an addict, right? And for all you Gen Ys who like to say that we're good at multitasking because we grew up with this technology, then why do you keep crashing your cars while you're texting? There's no biology to support that whatsoever. What you are good at is being distracted, right? It is addictive. When you're driving in your car and your phone goes beep. Yes, we all hate the email, true. We hate the email. What we love is the bing, the buzz, the flash, the beep. We love it. When it goes beep, it's like someone loves me, right? We sit there and like we all hate email, and yet while we're working, we have to sort of lean over to our email client and hit refresh a few times. Refresh, 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 nothing. Okay, keep working. Refresh, 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 nothing. Okay, keep working. Refresh it, nothing. So we do the same with our phone. We just look, refresh, nothing. Okay. Right? It's because we want the dopamine, right? And it's so addictive. This is why when you're driving and your phone goes beep, right? And you can't wait 10 minutes to get to wherever you're going to read it, you have to check it now. That's an addictive behavior, right? And even if you do check it, it says, are we still on for dinner next Thursday? And you can't wait 10 minutes to say yes, you have to do it right now for next Thursday. That's dopamine. It's the same as gambling. It's the same as alcohol. It's the intense craving that I have to have it now. And like all addictions, we waste time, we waste resources, and we destroy our relationships because of it. Go for dinner and sit like this and tell me how well your marriage is doing. Just saying, right? Nobody feels like you're engaged when you're standing at a slot machine, even though you might be talking to them sitting next to you. It's the same thing. Highly, highly addictive. And in organizations, when all we use are bonus reward systems with goal setting, we can actually addict people to performance. This is what happened in the investment banks. All we do is give them a bonus for each time they hit the number, hit the number, hit the number, hit the number. We know what the number is. We can see it. Dopamine, 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 dopamine. And they can actually get addicted to performance, which is why we have the other two chemicals, the selfless chemicals. Dopamine and endorphins are the selfish chemicals because we don't need anybody's help to get them. Go to the gym, achieve your goals, go through your to-do list, you're good to go. It feels awesome. But the serotonin and the oxytocin, those are the social chemicals. Those are the ones responsible for making sure we help each other and care about each other, right? Let's talk about the first one, serotonin. Serotonin gives us the feeling of pride and status. That's what serotonin is, right? So a college graduate who walks up on stage, and receives her diploma, as she takes the diploma, that intense feeling of pride, that's serotonin, right? When you win something and you get public recognition, the whole point of serotonin is that it comes from the public, right? Because we're social animals and our bodies are rewarding us when our community, our tribe pays us respect. It feels good. When I stand up here and you applaud, it feels good because serotonin is released, because it says that the tribe, the group that I rely on, that I hope will protect me, is saying, we like you, right? We clap. And so it feels good, and I can feel my status rise, I can feel my pride rise, and confidence. Serotonin gives you self-confidence, right? So here's the best thing about serotonin. Just as that college graduate is receiving her diploma and getting that surge of serotonin, at the exact same time, her parents sitting in the audience also get a surge of serotonin and also feel great pride. Serotonin is attempting to reinforce behaviors that encourage protector and protectee, parent and child, coach and player, boss and employee, that I will sacrifice and do things for you so that you have opportunity in the world. And when you achieve great things and raise your status in our community and we pay you homage, not only will you feel pride, but we will feel pride. So we will continue to sacrifice and do good things for you so that you will continue to do big things and eventually do the same thing for others. It's attempting to advance our species. That's what it's attempting to do. The problem is we can short-circuit it, just like we can with dopamine, with alcohol and things like that. We can short-circuit the serotonin system, right? Because when you get likes on Facebook or on Instagram, when people like it, it feels good. And you have young kids right now who beg people to like their pictures. Why? Because it feels good. The problem is it's artificial, because we didn't do anything for anybody. It's free. Why do you think we call status symbols status symbols? It's not an accident. It's because in our society, it's basically a materialistic society where we judge who's strong in our society based on how much money they make, right? It used to be like if you were physically strong and you protected me, I felt good, you felt good, serotonin. And now we judge the strength of someone in our society based on how much money they make. So these conspicuous displays of wealth raise our status, right? That's why the logos are on the outside. We want everybody to see the Gucci and the Chanel and the Prada. Put that red stripe on, man. Don't put it on the inside, outside. They got to see, right? And when we put on our Prada sunglasses, when we put on our Gucci shoes and we walk down the street like this, it feels good. We can feel the status rise. The problem is we didn't do anything for anybody to get it. We tricked ourselves. And this is why the feeling runs out. You never run out of serotonin when you're a parent. It feels good to be a parent all the time. When you buy your Prada shoes, it eventually runs out, and so you have to buy the next big thing. And this is why money can't buy happiness, because the status you get when you buy the bigger house, the faster car, the nicer pair of shoes, it lasts for a little bit, but then you got to get a nicer one and a bigger one and a bigger one and a bigger one and a bigger one, and it never feels good. It's because there was no human relationship. Serotonin is also the chemical of leadership. Why do we have leaders? Look, everybody knows we have leaders. Why do we have leaders? We used to live in communities of about 100 to 150 people, right? This presents a practical problem, right? Somebody brings back a carcass, some food, dumps it on the ground. We're all starving, and so we all rush in to eat. Now, if you're lucky enough to be built like a linebacker, you will muscle your way to the front of the line, and if you're the creative one of the family, you will get an elbow in the face. This is not a good system when we rely on each other, where we have to look out for each other. You see, the value of group living is very important because it means I can go to sleep at night and trust that someone in my community will look for danger. Now, if you just punched me in the face to get to food and I didn't get to eat that night, odds are pretty good that I'm not going to alert you to danger while you're sleeping. Bad system. And so we evolved into hierarchical animals. We constantly judge each other as to who's alpha and who's not alpha. We sort of, who's the stronger in our society, right? Like I said, whether it's wealth or whether it's physical strength, it's all dependent on whatever community we live in. You know, if you're in the military, courage and service are things that will raise your status. If you're a weightlifter, physical strength will raise your status. If you're a coder, you know, your hacking ability will raise your status. It's a relative standard. But when somebody is alpha to us, when we see them as more dominant than us, we voluntarily step back and allow them to eat first. It's a much better system. We allow our alphas to eat first. And alphas get first choice of meat and first choice of mate. We don't get first choice of meat or mate, but we do get to eat eventually, and we don't get an elbow in the face. Good system. Everybody gets to eat, and nobody's mad at each other. To this day, we are perfectly happy with our alphas getting special treatment. No one has a problem with a celebrity getting a better table at the restaurant than us. No one has a problem with somebody more senior than us at the office having a bigger office or getting more money for their job. They could be idiots, and yet we're okay with the fact that they make more money simply because they rank higher than us in the formal hierarchy. We have no problem with it. In fact, we expect it. Can you imagine if the President of the United States had to carry his own luggage? We'd be incensed. We'd be like, what? He's the president. Can't somebody carry his luggage? I will carry his luggage. It would be an honor. In other words, when we see someone as alpha, sometimes it's even an honor for us to do menial labor just to serve our alphas. This is why we have hierarchy, right? However, it comes at a cost. If you are the alpha, if you are the leader, if you are the one enjoying all the perks of leadership and alphaness, it does not come free. You see, you actually are stronger or smarter. That's why we give you the alpha position. And you actually do get all the perks. In other words, you eat first, and you get the first choice of mate, and you get all the advantages, which means you're in better shape, and you're better looked after. And we give you all the love and adoration, and so your body's filled with serotonin, so not only do you feel pride, you're oozing with self-confidence. We're not idiots. The group is not an idiot, because we expect that when danger threatens us, we want the stronger guy with who's better fed and all the comforts to rush towards danger to protect us. This is why we give you first choice of mate, because you might get killed. And we want your genes in the gene pool. This is the cost of leadership. You have to be willing to rush towards danger to protect your people. If you don't, you are not a leader. You are simply an authority stealing from your people. That's all you're doing. This is why we are so offended by some of these investment bankers and their disproportionately high salaries. It's not the numbers. It's that they have failed their social contract. They have violated this deep-seated social contract. We know that they didn't protect their people to get all that money. In fact, we know that they sacrificed their people to get that money. So we are viscerally angry and offended. It's not the money. If I told you we're going to give $100 million to Nelson Mandela, anybody have a problem with that? No. $250 million to Mother Teresa. Got a problem with it? No. It's because we know that they have fulfilled their social contract, which is why we're perfectly happy to give them the advantages, give them the perks, and let them have the money. It's not the money. It's that they have violated the social contract of leadership. Leaders are the ones who are willing to sacrifice themselves to protect their people. That's what a leader is. And as a result, they can enjoy all the perks of leadership. Oxytocin. Oxytocin is the feeling of love and trust. It's all the warm and fuzzies, right? Oxytocin is the reason we can sit in a room with our friends, say nothing, watch television, and love spending time with them. It's the physical company. It's the warmth and love we have towards other human beings that produces this, that comes from oxytocin. Oxytocin is trying to get us to look after each other. Here are some ways you can get oxytocin. Physical contact is one, right? Physical contact produces oxytocin, right? Hugging someone feels really, really nice, right? This is the reason you never want to ask someone to marry you while you're having sex, because there's huge amounts of oxytocin while you're having sex, right? Don't ask them to marry you because you wake up the next morning and you realize you weren't in love, right? Oxytocin, it's all the feelings of warmth and closeness, right? So when you shake hands with somebody, right? Let's say we're going to do a deal together, and we're at contract and everything's fantastic. I'm excited to work with you, you're excited to work with me, and I put my hand out and say, I can't wait to do business with you. And you go, I don't need to shake your hand, let's just sign the contract. And you go, well, great, well, let's shake on it. You go, no, I agree to all the terms. Let's just sign the contract. I can't wait to do business with you either. Somebody's simple refusal to touch your skin, to form the social contract that exists deep within our bodies and release oxytocin, means you will either go into that deal with doubt or scuttle the whole deal. And yet, we think business is rational and about coming to agreement on terms. No, business is about human relationships and our willingness to trust someone, because when we trust someone, it means we will turn our backs and trust that we won't get stabbed. And that comes from oxytocin, not terms in a contract. It's about trust. Here's some other ways you get oxytocin. Acts of generosity. An act of generosity is defined by doing something for someone, expending time and energy with no expectation of anything in return. Money doesn't count. I can prove it. Let's say, here, what if I told you that before today's event, I went online and I donated $500 to charity? what would you think about me? You'd be like, good for you. What do you want, a medal, right? But what if I told you that last Saturday I gave up half my day and I went and painted at schools in the inner city? You're like, cool, nice, right? Value of my labor, a lot less than $500. You can get a lot more people painting for $500. But as human beings, we have a finite commodity called time. It doesn't matter how rich or poor you are or where you were born, we all have 24 hours in a day. And because our survival depends on looking after each other, we put a very, very high premium on time and someone's willingness to give us their time. And so when we give time and energy to somebody with no expectation of anything in return, that's a non-redeemable commodity, it makes people actually look upon us with great gratitude. Great gratitude. If somebody takes you out to play golf or for dinner simply because they want your business, that's not generosity. They want something from you. That's just a protracted transaction, right? Real generosity, no expectation of anything in return, right? I'll give you an example. I was walking down the streets of New York, true story, and a guy in front of me, his backpack had opened up and a bunch of papers spilled out on the ground, right? So I bent down, gathered them up, gave them back to him, pointed out that his bag had opened, and went about my day. Small act of generosity, small burst of oxytocin. I felt good for my actions. The recipient of the generosity, right? He got a shot of oxytocin too. So the giver of the generosity gets some oxytocin, and the recipient of the generosity gets some oxytocin. We both felt good in that situation, right? I get to the end of the block, and I'm standing there minding my own business, waiting. It says, do not cross, do not walk, which as a New Yorker is an amazing thing that I stood there. It's probably traffic. And a guy standing in front of me turns around, true story, guy turns around and says, I saw what you did back there. That was really cool. As it turns out, witnessing an act of generosity releases oxytocin also. I promise you, simply because he witnessed an act of generosity and had oxytocin released into his system, I promise you that guy did something nice for somebody that day. This is the science of pay it forwards, right? Oxytocin actually makes us more generous. It actually makes us nicer people. The more generosity we give, the more we do for people, the more we want to, the better we feel, the more they do. This is designed that way so that we look after each other. If we do things for each other, we're more likely that somebody else will do something for each other, right? If I come to your house for dinner and you make me a lovely dinner, you're a wonderful host, and the next day I send you an email saying what a wonderful host you are and what a wonderful meal, thank you, or 3 days later you receive a handwritten note from me with the exact same words as in the email, which one makes you feel better? The handwritten note. The sentiment was the same, the intent was the same, the words were the same. The only difference is you know it took me a little extra time and a little extra energy to send that note, and you felt it. Do not kid yourselves to think that we can make people feel good with email. We cannot. It's too easy. I was talking to some executives from a big oil company, and they were telling me how much they cared that their employees enjoy coming to work. Like they care about their employees' fulfillment. And I said, no, you don't. And they said, yeah, we do. And I said, no, you don't. And they said, yeah, we do. And I said, no, you don't. You can see where this went. So they finally said to me, what are you thinking? I said, I bet that you hired some high-price consultancy to send out an online survey to find out if they like their jobs. And they said, well, we didn't hire a consultancy. So I said, okay, so here's the difference. Let's say you send your son an email. Dear son, it's really important to us, to your mother and I, that you feel like you're a valuable member of this family. Please tell us candidly what we can do better so that you feel that we trust you and that you're a productive member of this. Love, Dad. Or walk into his room, sit on his bed, put your arm around him and say, hey, it's really important to your mom and I that you feel like you're a valuable member of this family. Please tell us candidly what we can do better, because it really matters to us that you feel like we care for you and that you're a member part of this family. The words are the same, the sentiment are the same, the intent is the same, but only one did we give time and energy. The best leaders are not the ones that send the most emails that say how great you are. The best leaders are the ones that stand up from their desks, walk across the hallway, knock on your door, and say, good job today. That's it. That's it. Or come in to tell you something that they need to improve. Even discipline, right? Even discipline is fine. When we know, we will feel that you care if you actually give your time and energy, even if it's to get me in trouble. I actually will feel that you care. That's what makes us engaged and want to do more. The more we care about each other, what starts to happen is there's something called a circle of safety that starts to happen. The world is filled with dangers. In caveman times, it was weather and saber-toothed tigers and lack of resources. And so if we felt safe in our tribes, that means we would work together to deal with the dangers that lurked outside. Well, guess what? In the real world, any company, there are dangers. It's a constant. It's threats from other companies. It's the whims of the economy. It's who knows what's going to happen. It's unknown technologies that can show up and just destroy your business in 2 minutes. There's all these dangers outside. If you're worried about the dangers inside your company, politics, backstabbing, that my boss doesn't care for me, that they would sooner have layoffs than they would lose their numbers. They would sacrifice me before their numbers instead of sacrificing their numbers before me. If that's how we feel at work, if we never feel safe at work, that means we're going to invest all our time and energy confronting the dangers inside the organization, which makes the organization terribly poorly equipped to face the dangers outside the organization. But if every single person inside the company feels safe and feels like management would rush towards danger to protect them, if they would sooner lose numbers than lose people, if people are hired carefully for who they are and the character that they possess and not simply because they got a Harvard MBA, if I feel like I come to work and I can screw up and somebody will show me what I did wrong so I can try again as opposed to firing me, and I have no fear when I come to work whatsoever, we will all naturally collaborate and trust each other and invest all of our time and energy to face the dangers outside. Outside dangers are a constant. They cannot be changed. Inside dangers are a variable, and they are controlled by leadership. The leaders decide how big the circle of safety is. We're only going to put a circle of safety around the senior executives and the board. How does everybody else feel? The circle of safety has to extend to the most junior person in the company, that everybody feels safe. And when they do, guess what they'll do? They'll invite customers into the circle as well. And when customers feel safe and trust you that you would sooner sacrifice your numbers than me, then I will give you a lifetime of loyalty and love, and I will defend you as if you're my own family. And by the way, you can offer me more money or a better product. I'm not leaving because I feel safe. That's all we want as human beings. We are tribal animals. All we want is to be in an environment where we feel safe. That's what vulnerability means in a relationship. It means I feel safe. It means I can go to sleep at night and trust that you will look out for me. The problem is we keep building companies that are all based on dopamine, and we've separated each other. We don't talk to each other. We've canceled all the conferences. We don't get up from our desks anymore. We do everything by email. We don't meet each other. We don't hug each other. We don't shake hands anymore. Everything's digital. And guess what? Nobody feels safe. Human contact. I walked the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. I was talking to some of the traders on the floor. And they were telling me, I love this, that when things go wrong, like crash or something unknown, all of these algorithms and computers that we have that's supposed to control everything, everybody wants a human being to do the trade. Because we don't trust computers. We trust people. We currently have the technology to allow a computer to control the takeoff, flight, and landing of an aircraft. That exists. That crash in San Francisco the other day, that was a human error, not a computer error. And yet we still get on planes because we're okay with human errors. Would anybody here allow their children or their parents to get on an airplane that had no pilots? Why not? They just sit there and punch buttons anyway. Why not? Technology is fantastic when everything is right. But it's when danger lurks and things go wrong that we want the judgment of a human being that cares about us and cares and has their own family and their own will to survive and their own will to feel protected. We want them at the controls. That's who we want. It's this. It's this. You know why? I could stand here and do a video conference and give the exact same talk, and you could still even show up together, and would it feel the same? Why does everybody keep thanking me for coming to Gainesville? I could have just phoned it in. It's because you're expressing gratitude for the time and the energy, and most importantly for that. I can do that. Oh, yeah. How good is that? For me too. That's why, yeah, they are. That's why, not a stranger. You have to let you. Yeah, hugs are good too when they let you. Yeah. So this is all about the circle of safety. In the organizations in which we work, we must demand to feel safe. We must ask our leaders to feel safe, because here's the great thing about leaders. They may have power over individuals, but they work for the group. The group has power over the leader as a group, right? This is why dictators keep bussing in people when they have rallies, and why they pretend that they won elections, is because they want to pretend that they have the legitimacy of the people. And yet they keep the people far, far away because they're afraid of the people. They have all the guns, they have all the tanks, they have all the barbed wire, and yet they fear the people. Why is that? Because socially, the leader works for the people, always. And when this is not about unionizing. This is about a group of people who say, hey, you don't make us feel safe. You would sooner lay us off than suffer numbers for the quarter. Like, you'll lose numbers for the year, and yet you'll destroy our lives. And to you, that makes sense. We demand change. This is what a market-driven economy means. Milton Friedman was completely wrong. Milton Friedman is the one who sort of gives the definition, the Nobel Prize economist who defined the market economy of the day. And he said, the corporation only has one social responsibility: to make a profit and stay within the confines of the law, of the rules. That's what he says. In other words, the highest level is the law. And then the corporation has done nothing wrong. So then you have companies like Apple who keep money in Ireland, where they found a loophole. So by the way, they broke no law. But it kind of feels off, though, doesn't it? And they shrug their shoulders and say, totally within the law. Broke no laws. True. Here's another company that broke no laws. In 1912, these new big ocean liners were sort of becoming popular. And the law that governed how many lifeboats go on hadn't been updated for these new large liners yet. And so the largest size were ferries, because that's what we used to use big ships for. And so when they built the Titanic, they put the maximum number of lifeboats the law required on the deck, which is about 75% too few. Okay? They even made the size of the decks bigger, expecting the law to be changed later, but that hadn't been changed yet. So they wanted to save money on expensive lifeboats, which you had to buy, and they had upkeep. There's a capital expenditure to look after all those lifeboats on the deck. The Titanic hit an iceberg, and 1/4 of the people survived. 75% of the people on the Titanic died because there was only enough lifeboats for 1/4. They broke no laws. They upheld the law to the letter of the law. That's the problem. When the highest standard we have is the law, there are consequences. There is a higher authority. There's a moral authority that is our responsibility to provide the circle of safety for each other. Then and only then, when we make decisions based on the circle of safety, will people give us their loyalty, their love? Will they work with us with blood, sweat, and tears? And it doesn't matter what happens in the economy with the outside danger, because rough ships make it through heavy waters because of the strength of the crew. We judge Jack Welch as a brilliant CEO because his ship went faster than everybody else's in calm water. That's not a standard. He left. And then GE collapsed after 2008, and they had to have a government bailout, right? Costco, they needed no government bailout. You know why? Because they committed to the safety of their people. GE had a policy that we lay off 20% of our bottom 20% of our people whose work does not directly contribute to the share price. How does Costco reward people? If you look after each other, you're good. If you invested in Costco and GE the day that Costco went public, December 1985, this is what your GE would have looked like. Under Jack Welch, it would have been a roller coaster through the 80s and 90s, and if you sold it at exactly the right time, you would have made 4,000% of your money, but if you didn't sell it at exactly the right time, you wouldn't have, and it literally looks like this, and then you have 2008, and then it is where it is now. Here's what Costco looks like through all the same economic weirdness. If you had invested $1 in GE and $1 in Costco on the same day in December of 1985, your money in GE you would have made 600%. If you invested in the S&P, you would have made 500%. If you invested in Costco, you would have made 1,200%. Shareholder value? You tell me which one's better. Circle of safety, big, or circle of safety, small? This is what leaders do. They determine who's in, and they determine the size of the perimeter. And everything else takes care of itself. It's not about hiring strong people. All human beings in their bodies, when we feel safe, will naturally take care of each other. That's just how it works. I ask all of you to do something nice for someone, not because you have to, but because it feels good. You can even do it selfishly. Hold the door open for someone. When the elevator is about to close, don't go, sorry. Actually, hit the open button, right? If somebody cuts you off on the road, they're one car ahead of you, let them go, right? When your barista gives you a cup of coffee, say thank you. When you have to tell somebody something, good or bad, get up from your desk or make a phone call, right? In fact, you know the reason why we get so many emails? It's because we reply to all of them. If you want fewer emails, start picking up the phone. Hey, I got your email, just wanted to reply to you. And I promise you, your email box will get smaller, and I promise you the amount of information that will be exchanged in that 30 seconds on the call will be so much more than the 7 minutes it took you to write the perfect email and then reply, and then reply, and then reply, and then reply, and then have to pick up the phone because now you have a fight. Because all you did was escalate. And we do it as well. What do you mean you're not coming to the movies on Thursday? You promised me you're coming to the movies on Thursday. Reply. I told you. Pick up the phone and ask them what's going on. Always, always. Do little things like that and watch how much better the world gets around you. You will be amazed. Not my opinion. That's just how we're made. Thanks very much.